Okay, let's talk a little bit about the foundational documents that we need to know for AP US government and politics. The first, obviously, one of the more obvious ones that we need to tackle is the Declaration of Independence. We have to understand the balance that exists there between individual rights and governmental power, and how the members of the Continental Congress decided to sever ties from Great Britain, and namely a lot of the problems that they addressed and the complaints that they made within the Declaration, and how those became foundational parts of what would become the United States Constitution. We also have to understand the Articles of Confederation, knowing how these were sort of the first draft of the governmental documents of the United States. Have to understand both the positives and the negatives of the Articles of Confederation, and know why we ultimately had to replace the Articles of Confederation with the Constitution. We also need to know Federalist number 10, which is one of several Federalist papers that we have to understand. This one talking about the balance between individual rights and the government, particularly talking about factions and how those can cause issues within a union, the sort of us versus them mentality that can arise. We also have to talk about Federalist number 51, which talks about checks and balances, the three branches of government that exist that we talked about that were driven down by Enlightenment thinkers like Montesquieu, where we saw how there needs to be a balance of power, that one branch of the government can't have too much power over the other two. We also have to talk about Federalist number 70, which talks a little bit about the executive and the powers that the presidency has and does not have. The president was initially viewed as, in some, as a worry of becoming a new king, of becoming a new monarch. And so there was a lot of debate centered around what powers the president actually had and how they would be able to be curtailed in this new democracy. And the last of Federalist papers we have to talk about is Federalist number 78, which talks about the judiciary. Obviously, the rule of the courts in this new government was going to be incredibly important. We will talk about the required Supreme Court cases and how important they are and having to know them, from the first establishing judicial review to up until more recent cases like Citizens United, and really just the power that the judiciary had as part of that checks and balances. We also have to talk about Brutus number 1, which again is talking about this balance between the government and the people, and how the government should have its power derived from the people, and that the powers that the government will continue to take if they are given the opportunity, and that we, the people, have to make sure that we do not give too much power to the government. Obviously, one of the most important documents, not just of knowing it as a required document for really understanding the government in the grand scheme of things, is the Constitution as well. Knowing the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, why the Articles of Confederation were replaced, and how we use that as kind of a scaffold for what would become the Constitution, and the process itself of actually adopting the Constitution and the importance of federalism as it exists. We also have to understand Letters from a Birmingham Jail. This is an incredibly important document that connects the 14th Amendment to civil rights, to the Equal Protection Clause, and obviously the importance of someone like Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States in a period of huge domestic upheaval, and understanding really where he was coming from, and the detail that goes into this letter, which helps us understand what we need to know about our government and how effective it is, and how it's really using those powers effectively or not.